We are so pleased tonight to welcome Shosan Victoria Austin, who many of you know, um, if not by her teaching, certainly by her reputation. She's a senior Dharma teacher at the San Francisco Zen Center, a teacher of both Zen and yoga. She's a Dharma heir in the lineage of Shunryu Suzuki, internationally recognized Soto priest, and she's certified as an intermediate teacher in the Iyengar yoga tradition. Victoria is actively engaged around issues of inclusion, accessibility, and the right use of power. Her practice goal, as she puts it, is to wake up in a way that benefits beings. And then her teaching, among those goals, are this rich turn that includes transmitting Zen Buddhism, as a yogic path and yoga as a path of awareness. I first met Victoria, I think about 20 years ago now, at the Maria Zen Center in Dallas when she came to lead author a precept ceremony and also her teaching so generously. Since then, at an American Zen Teachers Association meeting and on her numerous wonderful podcasts that are available widely on YouTube. I want to say that Henry has been sitting with us from the Dallas airport and he and Claire are just landed, but are just now boarding the plane on to Santa Fe. They were so hoping to be able to hear this talk. They will hear the recording of it, Victoria, and Henry joins me in extending a deep, warm welcome and all of our gratitude to you. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks. So means that now I have to give a talk for Henry and Claire. So because you know, they're in transit, and as we all know, flights, airplanes, life is a little bit complicated these days, and we all need to take care. And it seems like a long time. How many people have been mostly in shelter in place over the last couple of years? So a few. And I know it's not as strict where you are as it is where I am, but here we're masking and we have to show proof of vaccination to get into restaurants and stores, some stores. So, you know, it's been a long haul. And some of what, and it's, in a way, it's surreal because some parts of life are as if nothing had happened. Other parts of life are extremely heartrending. Like the other day, I did a well-being ceremony for a man who had been unable to get surgery after he was diagnosed with a very aggressive form of cancer. And his diagnosis happened 3 months before he was able to get his surgery. And so for 3 months, he had to live with the understanding that his cancer was advancing very, very quickly, but that he was one person in a long line waiting for surgeries that had very limited medical personnel in his town to give because of the emergency need. Whereas other people are telling me things like, you know, I love shelter in place. I've been able to get my house organized and I've learned so many new recipes and my practice is much better than it's ever been. So, which is it? The inequalities are profound. Which is it? Not to mention the inequalities between this country and other countries that have less access to the resources we have in so many different ways. And so I actually wanted to, if it's okay with you, how many people actually practice with the Daihi Shindarani? Anybody actually use that chant or not? So it sounds like you're not familiar with it. It's a chant that's recited in many places in the world. And Aiken Roshi certainly knew it because we had a conversation about it. And I think Ruben probably did too. And it's a chant that is for the heart and mind of compassion. And, you know, Soto Zen practice, unlike Sanbo Kyodan, we're boring. Don't tell anyone I said so, but we're really boring. And so when we chant, it's just like one tone. No sananda namu karatan no toraya. That's kind of what we do. It just goes along. Whereas in Sanbo Kyodan, there's more variety. And you get to study Genjo koan, the koan of daily life, in so many different ways. So there are contrasts in traditions. Excuse me, but I wanted to play just a little bit of this music for you because it really touched me. And because it's a chant that the monk who gave this chant, he's not in my tradition, but he's giving it for the benefit of the whole world. So I would like to play just a couple minutes of it. Would that be okay? So I'm going to share screen. Share screen. And here we go. That's a thousand-armed Avalokiteshvara. And here we go.
Do you know what I see here?
Whoops,
I see
sorry.
every single house wasting money.
Okay, I'll skip the ads.
Nam karatan no
So thanks for listening. Sorry, I only played a total of 2 minutes of this, but I just loved this. And I loved that he hired musicians or got musicians to play with him, that he put the monotone chant to a melody, that he showed where he lived and he showed his posture and the posture that he's taking in relation to the world, and that he just put himself out there in this way. Those are some of the things I really love about this chant. And this chant is, it's called the Daihishin Dharani, which is the great compassionate heart-mind Dharani. Dharanis are chants that to us might sound like nonsense syllables. But a Dharani is a chant that's kind of like a mantra, kind of like if we were to chant Om or Om Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. The word Om, the Ah part would, it would come from the belly, the hara, the tande. The U part would come from the middle of the body. The part would come from the throat, tongue, and upper part of the body. And the sounds themselves, the seed syllables themselves, have a yogic impact on the body in that they signal the hormonal messaging systems of the body and the vagus nerve to bring us into rest and relax. And you saw his posture, it was completely upright and completely relaxed. And that's the posture that we take in relation to suffering, completely upright, completely awake, and completely accepting. So this chant and how he did it was very special to me. And it kind of reminded me, unfortunately, at the beginning of the pandemic, I lent someone my copy of Taking the Path of Zen. And they never returned it, and now I can't remember who I lent it to. And of course, I haven't been in a bookstore for 2 years. So, but I seem to remember that it included Aiken Roshi and Ann Aitken's tax letter from about 20 or 25 years ago, in which they said something like, "Dear IRS, we are a poor old couple, and we don't really appreciate what the United States of America is doing with our tax money. And so we've decided to put it into escrow for you. And when we feel sure, because of how you respond, that you're spending it in a way that that we can, in all good conscience, live with, it's your money. It's here for you." And so wanted to say that that is of this spirit as well, completely upright and completely relaxed. They didn't try to be something that they weren't. They just said exactly what was going on for them. And they were responsible with the requirements without being cowed by them. They followed their conscience. So, and I've been trying to think of other examples and inspirations from my life, from the people around me, and they're just all around. You know, from the teachers who teach their children in particular ways, to the man I saw putting out cones to create a car ballet path for the vaccine. So I asked him what he was doing there, and he said he was there because he almost died, and he hadn't really believed in the virus. Then he almost died, and so he decided that he was going to do what he could as a volunteer to make sure that the vaccine was accessible to people. So the way he was laying out the cones to make a path for the cars was remarkable. So there were these beautiful, like snaking lines of car tracks, a lot like the raking lines that we saw in the Japanese garden just now. It was just like that. And then I asked him, I said, wow, you're making such incredible, an incredible art piece. You're making an auto ballet out of this parking lot, because it was the UCSF parking lot, which goes on for, I don't know, a quarter mile in every direction. And everywhere you could see, the cones were lined up in paths, and everybody was being very polite and signaling and letting other cars go ahead of them. And he just smiled and he said, yes. And it was clear he was really, really proud. He was all but doing this, and telling me about his artwork. And he called over his friend to tell him so that his friend could tell me about his placement of the traffic cones. And it was just so real. I loved it. And so I've been thinking that maybe this realness, kind of unassuming realness, is exactly what we need to get through this together. So the chant that we were listening to, the Daihi Shindarani, it turns out that it's recited by people all over the world and has been for a couple thousand years, like 1,500 years. And that in Sanskrit, it's called the Nilakantha Dharani, which means the Dharani of the one whose neck turned blue. And I'll tell you that story in a moment. In Chinese, it's Da Bei Jo. In Vietnamese, Chu Dai Bi. Of course, I have no concept of what the tones might be for any of those. And in Korean, Sin Myo Jangu Dao Dalani. Okay, so it's recited in at least those countries as well as in English. And I want to tell you the story of it because, if we think about that straightforward, appreciative uprightness that's completely relaxed and renunciatory at the same time, we have to look for examples, not just in the present day, but to see how it's part of our tradition, how it's part of what we do. So when I was studying it, I found out that this Dharani is, it's a cheer. It's actually a cheer. How we say, first and 10, do it again. Or, we have that kind of cheer. Well, this chant is very much like that. So it goes, if it were in English, it would be like, go, go, blaze, blaze, burn, burn, awake, awake, I'm awake, I'm awake. And then, it has phrases like that in it. And so I didn't know that a cheer was part of the chants that we chanted every day. I didn't know that Zen monasteries used cheers. Like, who knew, right? But and so I looked into the story behind the chant, and it was really something. So it turns out that the angels and the demons were fighting a war over the nectar of life, over what would be considered immortal or eternal in times to come. So they were fighting a war, they disagreed, and there was an actual elixir called the nectar of life, or Amrita, that they were fighting over. And so the angels got nervous because they thought that if the demons muscled their way into a victory, that all religion and order in the world would be lost, and that we would be just subject to evil forces and go into states of moral decline. So the angels were very, very worried for us. And so they went to Brahma, the king of the gods. This is a Hindu story from the Puranas. And they said, Lord, won't you please just unmake those demons, because you made them, you can unmake them. So please do that so that order and peace can rule in the world. And Brahma said, no, I already made them. I don't unmake things, I make things. I create things. So sorry, I'm not going to do that. So they gave up on Brahma and went to Shiva, the Lord of Death. And they said, could you please kill off those demons? And Shiva said, nope, nothing doing, not going there, absolutely not. And then by then the angels were really desperate. They went off to Vishnu, who has the characteristics of maintaining, of creativity, of a kind of a inventiveness. And they said, okay, Vishnu, you're our last hope. What are we going to do? Please, be a brother, help us out. And Vishnu said, okay, here's a plan. I want you to go to the demons and offer to cooperate with them in a way, but it's going to be a competition that'll hook them in to having a fair fight with you. Tell the demons that you would like to engage them in a tug of war, and that whoever wins will get the nectar of life. And then I'll take over and do a fair distribution of the Amrita when this is all done. And the angels went for it. They said, great. And so they did that. They needed a fulcrum for the tug of war, and they decided to use Mount Sumeru. And then they needed a rope for the tug of war, and they asked Adishesha, who is the serpent couch and attendant of Vishnu, if he would please be their rope. So they wrapped Adishesha around Mount Sumeru and began their fight. Tugging one way, the other way, one way, the other way. And no one was winning. But the Mount Sumeru stood in the middle of a gigantic world ocean. And so to make it go better and see if they could get some leverage and, get some leverage and stability, they started throwing things into the ocean, like mountains, rivers, and the great earth, all into the world ocean or the universal ocean. And so a big mess was formed. And the first thing that came out of the churning wasn't the nectar of life. It was a poison that was so deadly that one drop of it would kill all life in the universe. And Shiva saw that this was happening and felt for all the creatures, all the beings of the universe. And so he opened his mouth wide and he drank the entire poisonous ocean in one gulp out of his compassion. And this part of his body turned blue with the poison. The poison didn't go further down, it didn't kill him, but his neck turned blue, and that's how he happened to be called Nilakantha, or the blue-necked one. And somehow this chant caught on, and it was translated from Sanskrit into Chinese and into Tibetan and into so many other languages, and people started chanting it every day and chanting it as a cheer for this state of mind that swallows the entire poison ocean in one gulp. And so I'm not going to go further into the story, but what I'm going to say is that's what we have to support each other to do. And sometimes all we can do is to notice when people do this and to cheer. But I want to say that this is not just a social story. We have to remember that Dharanis actually change the body, speech, and mind of the one who chants them. And think about what that Dharani means inside one's own body and mind. It's not just a Dharani that means that, it's any intention that's held with vigor, stated, communicated, and lived. So what does that mean? So what I want to say is that when the angels and demons are pretty clear, right? That's why we have the 3 pure precepts, where we vow not to do evil, we vow to do good. We vow to live and be lived for the benefit of all beings. And that's not a vow that's outside ourselves, that's a vow that's natural to us. But to make it real, we have to say it, and we have to say it with other people. We have to mean it, and we have to let them help us. And so that vow piece of it and the good and evil parts are pretty easy to understand. But the story is also a metaphor for our own bodies and minds. So the churning is breath, inhalation and exhalation. And the stuff that they threw into the ocean is just the 5 elements of existence. Everything that we have in common with everything and every being that has ever been. And the story is a story of practice, that when first we begin to churn our lives, what comes out isn't awakening or the nectar of life, but sometimes a deadly poison that can kill everything. So sometimes it's the poison that was inside all along that we actually now have to deal with. And and swallowing it at one gulp is also very clear, because you can't swallow it another way. There's no way to negotiate with or manipulate poison in our lives. We have to swallow the situation. And then, even though we have no idea what to do, we have no idea how we're going to do it, then we can go forward. So I can imagine Aiken Roshi turning to Anne as they're doing their taxes and saying, I can't do this anymore. You know, I've lived too long. I've been too many places. I'm not going to give another cent to people using my money in ways that kill me to hear about. And I can imagine Anne turning to him with that gleam in her eye and saying, I've got an idea. You know? And that's how it starts. You know, it's not fancy, it's not dramatic. It starts with realizing that, for instance, you know, when we say that we're not going to kill and we sit zazen and we decide, oh yeah, my knee hurts, but okay, I'm just going to pull it in because I just want to get through this period of zazen. I'll deal with it later. Right? Or when whoever it is in the bathroom for a few minutes too long, and we say to ourselves, they do that, I never do that, right? And we say to them, get out, you know? Anyway, we have to just swallow that in one gulp. and understand that this is our life, and that there aren't any other 1,000 eyes and 1,000 hands. We're the 1,000 eyes and we're the 1,000 hands. Our neck might turn blue, something might happen to us. But the natural order of mind is restored when we take the whole thing on at one go. So anyway, that's my message. It's not a very complicated one. I do want to say that we're all practicing with trauma. And so by taking it on at one go, I don't mean, chastising ourselves if we happen to be outside the window of tolerance. Taking it on at one go might be saying something like, boy, I haven't really slept very well in a year and a half. And it's because I'm lying awake worried every night about how I'm going to survive the next month, how I'm going to pay this or do that, whether it's okay to send so-and-so back to school or to do such and such, or gee, I haven't heard from so-and-so in a long time, So anyway, I'm not saying deny that. One gulp means here it is. Here we are. What now? Okay, to be continued. You want to talk about it? You have, looking at this lineup of people in front of me and in your 1 by 1.5 inch boxes here, I have to get really close to see. But I'm looking and I'm seeing some people who I know you've practiced for quite a long time. There's probably like 1,000 years of practice in this little collection of boxes right here. So anyway, let's hear it. Let's hear it.
Thank you so much, Vicki. And we would like to, thank you for the invitation to speak and engage. And so please, anyone, you can raise a hand if you have that Zoom skill under reactions or in person. Peg is watching, or in the chat.
I will need to unmute everyone, which means that Victoria and Valerie, you will both get muted, but you can unmute yourselves. There you go. If anyone wishes to speak, they can.
Victoria, I just offer a comment. This is so rich and touching and straightforward. But I was very touched by, all these years, how many times I've heard Ruben say, fully relaxed, fully alert, or fully alert, fully relaxed. This inviting us into this posture for practice for Zazen. And to say, that's the posture we're invited to take toward the world. Thank you. So Deborah McMillan has her hand up.
So go ahead.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
You can. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you for that wonderful story. I love stories, and I did have the privilege of meeting Robert Aiken at the very end of his life, and I can just see him doing what you said. It's very inspiring. And also, I wanted to just ask you if you could put the name of that Dharani in the chat.
Sure.
because you made like a reference, like we were seeing something. All I saw on my screen was the 1,000-hand Avalokiteshvara with the blue neck, but I didn't see anybody sitting upright except
Oh, I
you.
thought it was, I'm sorry, I thought it was in the music. Did you not see the video?
We just heard it.
No.
We didn't see it.
Oh, darn.
And this
Oh.
and the sound.
Let me see if I can find the link.
Maybe if you could put it
I'm
in the
just gonna
chat.
go back into history for a second. Yeah, okay, so wait a second here. I think I can find it. Yeah, here we go. Let's see, Mike, am I sending it to Michael or am I sending it to everybody? Everyone in the meeting. Let's see,
Everyone would be great.
Edit, paste. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, check out this video. And actually, I'll give you another this other one is Aimee Oye, who from Southeast Asia. This is a women's version, a 27-minute women's version of the Avalokiteshvara Dharani. And and another thing about it, Deborah and everybody, is that this Dharani is kind of like the Heart Sutra in that Avalokiteshvara takes the role of usher to all of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas in this Dharani. So you know how the part of the Heart Sutra that we ignore about Avalokiteshvara coursing deeply in Prajnaparamita, being safe from all suffering, and we just focus on the Shariputra part? Well, that whole sutra is actually Avalokiteshvara speaking. He's actually introducing the practice to us in that way. Well, in the long version of the Daihi Shindarani, I had no idea, not the version we recite in our temple, but the version that's recited in China and Korea and other countries. Avalokiteshvara calls on the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas not by their names, but by their own Dharanis. So he's calling on them from their own bodies and minds. Isn't that the coolest thing you've ever heard? I mean, he's speaking to them from the body to the brain. He's not using Avalokiteshvara, because we know Avalokiteshvara has 1,000 hands and 1,000 eyes. Which one is the true eye? All over the body's hands and eyes. No, whoops. Okay, only 50%. Okay, what do you say? Okay, throughout the body is hands and eyes, right? Throughout the body. And so we know that this is our tradition, that throughout the body is hands and eyes. Like our knee is a hand and an eye if we let it, right? Straightening the arms, we can't do it unless the shoulders have hands and eyes, right? It's not possible. But who knew that Avalokiteshvara could use all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas and hands and eyes to cultivate the universe like a garden towards awakening, which is what he did, like from the body, from the like a careful gardener who lets out water, at the right time. Avalokiteshvara lets out their own Dharanis to talk the hormones of the Buddhas and ancestors into giving messages to their brains to manifest in the world. So
Thank you. Wow.
okay. I know I was alive in the 60s, but I never quite felt the 1960s quite as much as I have in the last 5 minutes when I was answering your question.
Hello, can you hear
Hi.
me?
I can hear you. Is that
Oh,
Will?
yeah,
Yeah,
this is Will Brennan. Hi,
Will
Sean.
Brennan. Hi,
Hi.
Victoria Austin.
I thank you very much for bringing in the introducing us to the Dharani. Um, not every morning, but very often in our household, we also chant a Dharani. And I know, well, I think some of you are probably familiar with this, but this is another home run. This is another real neat one, Dharani. Um, Shoshai Mio Kikicho.
Yeah, for
How
protecting
do
life.
you with that?
Yeah. No
Oh,
samanda motanano harachi kotosha sonanan toji to and gyaki unnun. Okay. Shifura, hara shifura, chishudi, sohaja, senji, kya, shiri e somoko. So it ends with swaha, which is like amen.
yeah, yeah.
And yeah, and that Dharani is for protecting life.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, we used to refer to it as the Dharani for removing disasters.
Yes.
Just saying it differently.
Removing disasters.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it has an echo or a dedication afterwards that talks about seeing sanghas through any floods or fires that happen. It's a particularly good Dharani for right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I read the New York Times this morning. So San Francisco Zen Center gets one copy of the New York Times that everybody shares. So we sit around and have coffee and read each other the headlines. And it turns out in the New York Times this morning, there was a little article on how to protect yourself if there's a flash flood in the subway so that you don't drown.
Yeah.
I mean, really, right?
Hmm.
Can you imagine
No.
going down into the subway to get from here to there? And you're there with your little article that says what to do if there's a flash flood. So we need the Shosan Yokichijo Dharani.
Yeah.
We need the protection.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. And how did you happen to chant it? How do you happen to chant it at home?
Let's see. It was through Kaplo Roshi. Kaplo Roshi was my first teacher. And we, it's such a long time ago, and I'm getting older, and I can't remember a lot of different details of the past. But there were certain times that we did chant that. I'll have to think about that, and if I do, I'll get in touch with you and let you know.
Okay, actually, I made a mistake. It's the Enmei Juku Kanan Gyo for protecting life, the Shosai Myokichijo Dharani for removing hindrance. So you're absolutely right, and I was wrong.
Oh.
Yeah.
I think that came to Philip Kapleau because it's still to this day chanted at every Sazenkaya and every day of session at Sanun Zendo in Kamakura, where he studied with Kon Roshi.
Yeah. Yeah. And we chant it too. Yeah. It's chanted at Tassajara every single day. Yeah. So how about this, like this understanding of how responding to the world, responding to the needs, and particularly the inequality of the needs around us? I'm very interested in your wisdom. How have you come to be practicing with this during this whole long almost 2 years? I don't know how much time we have, but I'm really interested to hear. And anyone can answer.
Hi, can anybody hear me as well? Yeah, I think I wanted to go back to what you mentioned about Lord Shiva having swallowed the ocean, until his neck turned blue. Um, I think that there's, like luckily I haven't been in consuming any poison that I know of, so I think I'm okay. But even just like in life's difficulties, just in general, just daily life's difficulties, I think the swallowing could be alluded to simply, resting back in the witness. We have to deal with it, but kind of resting back in the pure awareness and giving that situation space. And it's easier said than done, but I try to practice like that when I encounter, just a daily life with somebody or something, to try to, I don't even want to use the word accept, but to observe. I like the word observe better, because it's not really accepting or rejecting. You're just observing it.
Mm-hmm.
And when I kind of rest back into that awareness, which, by the way, Lord Shiva, kind of familiar in some of the Hindu traditions, is about that pure consciousness and awareness. But I kind of, it helps me to deal with the situation in a little bit more of a clearer mind, rather than letting my emotions and reactions get the best of me. It helps me deal with it in a more objective way. And it's something that I think takes practice. But when you mention the swallowing, I tend to think of the swallowing as also witnessing as much as you can, and then acting from that witness rather than from your emotions.
Yes, yes, and that's exactly the classical, the Brahmanical interpretation of that story has to do with each one of us having a flash of light inside of us that can be function as a light to see by, or as a, like a flashlight in the dark to see by, or like a small voice that we wouldn't otherwise hear, to accept a situation, take a moment, and then respond instead of react. And that, it doesn't seem like that should be very difficult. Right?
Mm.
I mean, if we just come from the think mind, it seems like it should be easy. There's nothing more difficult than to respond like that, evenly across one's whole life. That's what's actually called upeksha. So sometimes we translate upeksha as equanimity, but the root of the word actually means being done with it. Having gone through all the changes that being empathetic with others people's pain or other people's pleasures, happiness or our own, all having gone through accepting that entire emotional range, we're finally done with the reactive mind. And that sense of being done with it is the meaning of the word upeksha. Although it's translated sometimes in English as disgust, it's not like disgust. It's more like, I'm over that. I've found that life's too important to do anything but take it in and respond. So thank you so much.
Since Henry's not here, I'd just like to say that somehow, with the coincidence of the rise in awareness of this great divide in this great ancient divide in our culture and our society, he really launched into, for himself, reading about racism and talking about it often in
Yeah.
really, really clear ways, challenging himself and challenging us, of course.
Yes.
And out of that, these little steps were taken to launch equity and inclusion group
Mhm,
that did meet and is continuing as involved.
mhm.
And it's a small thing, but it's really one face of the Sangha.
Yes. Yeah. Do you remember what Pamela Ayo-Yatunde said to the SEBA teachers? Were you there? I can't remember whether you were there last
I
year.
wasn't this time.
Okay, this was last September. I was offering right use of power, and I went to her talk. And what she recommended was that we all sign up for and attend a Bible study group, because we would learn more about our neighbors doing that, in a Black church, because as a rule, we would know more about our neighbors doing that and be able to get into something of more importance than all the messing around that most people have been doing. So, so this idea of actually, as we just heard, to actually swallow the pain in one gulp and respond. And how do we do that? I really want to recommend you have you read Resmaa Menakam's book? Have you read it? It's really great. It's called My Grandmother's Hands. And so it's and he has some free courses available online, which are really short. It's like a 5-day course, and each video is about 8 minutes long. So it's just my speed. And so, but the book is fantastic because it talks about somatics of oppression and healing from racism, which it turns out is one of the abiding legacies of this country, right? And racism is violence. And, James Baldwin said, innocence doesn't absolve us of the crime. Innocence is the crime. He was very brilliant. But if we think about that statement, innocence, as he was using it, and he was just so like intelligent and well-read and responsive, and he had swallowed the poison. And his books are the expression of his neck turning blue, of him doing everything that he could with the pain of the poison, right, in him. And so innocence does not absolve you of the crime. Innocence is the crime. He's using innocence in the way that you and I would use the word ignorance. Ignorance is ignoring. Ignorance is our ability to just go along while other people are saying, ouch, you're hurting me. Ouch, ouch. How can we actually not hear that, right? So I really look forward to hearing more, Valerie, about yours and Henry's and everybody's in the Sangha's work on this. And, Ruben's passionate about this. Aiken Roshi was passionate about it. It's there isn't anything like, if I had 3 wishes, this would be my top wish. So I'm sorry to blab on, because you probably have like 10 times as much as I do to say that's intelligent, true about this.
Top wish resonates, I think, for a lot of us, if not all.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Like I'm from a refugee family, right? So my mother and father were both Holocaust survivors, and we were rejected by the United States of America. And so Shanghai accepted my father. And then just as he was about to go, these two British ladies who he had flirted with in the park came through as his sponsors, and he was able to go to England. And as he got off, as he was working for coal miners, doing medical work for them. And when my mother got off the boat, she caught his eye, and he knew that she was the one, and they got married. And eventually they came to the US. And my family had a lot of trouble coming to the US. So my twin sister and I are the only American-born US people. And as soon as we came to Ellis Island, the authorities changed our names because they couldn't pronounce them. And so effectively we were erased. Our history was erased. And so my name, Victoria Amy, I inherited from, that's why I keep my English name and don't just use my Dharma name, because Victor was my mother's brother who gave his life so that she could live. And Amy is from Amalia, who gave her life while she was looking for him. And so, we need to remember those histories. And though the histories and the inequalities are not our fault, we have them now. They're our responsibility now. So how are we going to take up our responsibility? How are we going to swallow the poison? And what are we going to use as our hands and eyes? So also, they didn't accept my Zen practice. They wanted, it was a betrayal from their point of view. But if I hadn't practiced Zen, I wouldn't have a way to deal with this suffering. The Zen practice is my way to be able to hold the poison and to respond instead of reacting, disassociating, dissolving in despair and depression, and, kind of offing my own power and ability to do something and so on. Zen practice is the royal road to be able to respond instead of react. We have to support each other to do it.
Deep thanks, Victoria. This was a wonderful evening for us, and it will continue to resound.
Yeah. Likewise here too. And of course, Lois, if she's still here, it's probably like morning or afternoon for her or something. And in Hawaii, where she is. And then, are there people further east in the room, or is it mostly
people from Florida, from kind of all over the country?
Yeah, I see some sunsets and some lights and some afternoon light.
If it were earlier in the day, we'd also have UK and Australia and Germany, and they will hear this though. And
Fiona just raised her hand, I think, or were you just waving? Hi. You're muted. I can't hear you. I'm sorry.
I'm from Australia.
Oh, where in Australia?
Melbourne.
In Melbourne. Oh,
yeah.
My sister's Australian.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah, but she's in Double Bay.
Oh, Sydney.
Yes. Yeah. So are you okay in Melbourne? Because it was pretty stark there for a while.
Yes, we're in our 6th lockdown.
my-
But our vaccination rate is picking up, so we'll be out of the lockdown in a month.
Yes. 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 Yeah, I got my ETA, so I'm hoping to see you in a little while.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah, I mean, I can't go until the United States and Australia both say yes, but I usually go there every 6 months.
Oh, well, it's been lovely to hear you talk.
Thank you. It's so lovely to see you and hear from you. And I'm wondering, Valerie, do you usually like dedicate what we did, or
Oh,
what do we
Victoria,
do?
we would love
It's
for you
okay.
to do that. We would love for you to do that.
Okay, but I want, if anybody feels like something's left out of the dedication, I need you to pinky swear that you'll contribute after this is formally closed. Is that a deal? Swear. Okay, pinky swear. Okay. So so tonight we have offered our time, our attention, our experience, our pain, our wisdom, and our compassion together. We have heard and we have seen, and we have seeded places all over the country and all over the world with this heart and mind. May the positive energy of our time together benefit ourselves, like people putting on their own masks in an airplane. And may the positive energy permeate north, south, east, and west, above, below, and all around to reach and gladden the many beings.
And we would just add that we have offered gratitude. So thank you and
Thanks.
good night, everyone.
Please, please take care, Sangha treasure. Thank you.